Welcome to this new automotive news video for Sunday, May 17th, 2026. And today we're going to talk about some rather good news because a new European regulation is coming, and for once it's actually going to be useful, since it will require manufacturers to sell more reliable cars that age better over time. We'll also have two topics with quite a few numbers. On one hand, we'll talk about Honda, which has announced its figures for the first quarter of 2026. Numbers so bad that we haven't seen anything like them in several decades. We'll also see it similar for Jaguar, which is reporting poor numbers and facing major financial problems. And finally, we'll talk about Audi, which wants to relaunch one of its most iconic models, but isn't quite sure how to offer a vehicle that both its customers want to buy, and that also complies with the well-known European standards. These are the last topics of the week. I hope you'll find them interesting. If you do, I'm counting on you to show it by leaving a like and subscribing for the next videos. Boosting this video is the most important thing if you want to help my channel's ranking and give me a bit more visibility. And of course, also by leaving a comment where you share your thoughts on today's news. Indeed, today we're going to talk a bit about European automotive standards. It's true that we've gotten used to criticizing them because they do have a lot of negative and unintended effects on the car market. For example, the skyrocketing price increases we've seen in the new car market in recent years. Let me remind you that the average price of a new car in France in 2021 was 28,000 euros, and by 2026 it's almost 38,000 euros, an increase of 10,000 euros in 5 years, largely due to the regulations. Because manufacturers have to comply with more and more regulations, especially regarding the pollution from their combustion engines, which forces them to invest a lot of money just to keep them going. But also safety regulations like the GSR2 standards, which are very expensive as well, since they require all modern cars to have a whole range of sensors and software that simply didn't even exist just a few years ago. So there are negative effects, but sometimes there are also positive effects. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Euro 7 standard, which we've already discussed in videos several times over the past few months. Newly published documents reveal more details about the Euro 7 standard, and there are some quite interesting little things that could still have a pretty positive effect on our cars. Indeed, this Euro 7 standard will require manufacturers to offer their customers much more reliable cars, and especially cars that age much better. First example, the onboard pollution control systems on internal combustion and hybrid vehicles. You know, everything like particulate filter systems or AdBlue systems. I think we all know someone in our circle who has already had a problem with one of these two systems, and who had to go to the garage and pay a pretty hefty bill. Sometimes several hundred, sometimes several thousand euros, just for a simple repair of the particulate filter system, or a replacement of the AdBlue tank. Well, all that shouldn't happen anymore, or at least much less than before, since the Euro 7 standard wants to require manufacturers to make sure that all pollution control systems are fully functional, and that they don't have any defects during the first 8 years of a vehicle's life, or its first 160,000 kilometers. After these 8 years, which are now considered the normal lifespan of these devices, for an additional 2 years, until the vehicle reaches 200,000 kilometers, the onboard pollution control systems must remain functional. They will be permitted to lose some efficiency as long as they meet the compliance rate. If a defect were to occur in these emissions control systems before these deadlines, the manufacturer would be required to organize a recall of the affected models and cover the various costs of repair or replacement of the parts. For electric cars as well, there will be new obligations to comply with, especially regarding the condition of the batteries. Starting with the Euro 7 standard, the battery of an electric vehicle will need to retain 80% of its original capacity after 5 years, or 100,000 kilometers of use. To put it simply, if an electric car was originally sold as being able to travel 1,000 kilometers, then in theory, after these deadlines, that same electric car should still be able to travel 800 kilometers. And there's a second requirement to meet. 72% of the battery's original capacity after 8 years, or 160,000 kilometers. So to use the same example, an electric car that is sold as being able to travel 1,000 kilometers should be able to travel at least 720 kilometers after 8 years, or 160,000 kilometers of use. There are also new rules affecting both combustion and electric vehicles, particularly regarding the wheels. One of the key features of the Euro 7 standard is that for the very first time in the history of a Euro standard, it will add emissions limits for particles emitted by tires as well as by brakes, whereas our current brake discs are designed to have a lifespan of about 100,000 kilometers. We see automotive suppliers looking into new braking technologies and new materials for brake discs that allow them to meet the thresholds imposed by the Euro 7 standard by developing brake discs that would hardly wear out and would be able to last 300,000 kilometers. And it's the same for tires. Whereas in the past, the main criteria were price and grip, Now we're going to have a third very important criterion: lifespan. We're seeing major suppliers like Michelin looking into tire technologies that wear out much less than before and are able to last 3, 4, even 5 times longer. Of course, for now, we're only at the beginning of these technologies, which for the moment are not at all widespread in the automotive world and are currently very expensive. We're not at the industrialization stage yet, but we'll reach it since manufacturers and equipment suppliers must comply with the Euro 7 standards. All these innovations in the end are quite positive for the end customer, for the person who will own the vehicle. Changing tires less often, changing brakes less often, having the certainty that their battery won't weaken over the next few years, and not having to go to the garage every 2 years because their DPF is clogged. Those are still big savings. Where manufacturers are a bit less happy is that, for them, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Because indeed, the price of cars will go up again. Because all this development will have to be financed. They'll need to pay for pricier brake discs, tires, longer-lasting batteries, or more durable particulate filters over time. But on top of that, we know very well that manufacturers also make money from after-sales service. And for them, a car that comes back to the garage less often is not good news. What is certain in any case is that the Euro 7 standard is something never seen before in the automotive industry. With everything we've talked about in today's video, plus the complete overhaul of the WLTP system, which will calculate CO2 emissions and average fuel consumption, as well as the range of electric cars. It's the first time that manufacturers are facing so many new things at the same time. Speaking of new things, at Audi, it's an iconic model that has just been discontinued. The R8, the high-end sports model, discontinued in 2024 by Audi because they didn't really know what to do with it. At the time, Audi aimed to go fully electric, knowing their wealthy customers likely wouldn't buy an electric sports car. 2 years later, they want to backtrack because electric cars are progressing slower than expected and combustion engines still have more room in Europe. Brands will likely keep selling them after 2035 and into the 2040s. And also at the same time, in the United States, which is their main market for luxury cars, well, electric cars have practically disappeared. Audi wants to restart the development of an R8, except that in reality, they don't know what engine to put in it. They know it won't be 100% electric because it won't sell. And they don't want to put their V6 in it because it's not luxurious enough. The 4.0L twin-turbo V8 that you find under the hood of the RS6, for example, is a good engine. It's an engine that was designed to have torque early on, for good everyday use, but it's not spectacular enough to make it a supercar. The Audi V10 no longer exists. It won't pass the huge Euro 7 regulations. And Lamborghini, with whom Audi used to team up to develop its supercars, especially when it came to engine development, has gone its own way. Only Lamborghini from the beginning wanted to keep selling combustion engines for as long as possible. So they developed their own engine, a turbo V8, which they now put in their Temerario. First, Lamborghini wants to keep this engine exclusive and not share it with Audi. Second, even if they did, the Audi R8 would need to be completely redesigned for this unique engine. This would create an R8 that is extremely expensive to develop and produce, and one Audi could never make profitable. Currently, Audi faces a technological dead end, but they still want to complete the project, even just for image, but also since Audi is returning to F1, it would be a shame if they only had SUVs in their lineup. Still, it's a significant financial risk. Also, regarding financial risks, you should know things are going very poorly at Jaguar. Because the Jaguar Land Rover Group is closing the 2025-2026 fiscal year with a pretty massive loss, around 286 million euros. That means the group worked for a whole year. They made cars, they sold them, and yet they lost money. What's pretty interesting is, why did Jaguar Land Rover lose money? Jaguar Land Rover faces the same problems as the rest of the industry. First, American customs duties are an issue since Jaguar Land Rover lacks factories in the US, despite it being their main market. But also other reasons that are more unique to Jaguar Land Rover, and which are actually quite remarkable. The first is that Jaguar Land Rover was the victim of a cyber attack at the end of 2025, which, for more than a month, just think about how crazy that is, prevented them from selling cars, but also stopped them from running their factories. But also because Range Rover lost a lot of money on what they call warranty expenses. That's all the costs that Jaguar Land Rover had to cover in 2025 and 2026. To repair or replace defective parts on vehicles that are still covered by the manufacturer's warranty, Jaguar Land Rover faced numerous reliability issues that cost them heavily. I'll give a small example. Last year, they had to recall almost 200,000 cars. Almost every model in the lineup was affected because of an issue with the vehicle's electrical system. This impacted the hybrid system and other driver assistance systems. When the system malfunctioned, the entire vehicle would stop working. A recall like that is obviously very, very expensive to organize because you're recalling tens of thousands of cars. There's the logistics to pay for, the labor hours to pay for, and the parts as well, which are also very, very expensive. As a result, Jaguar Land Rover will have to launch a new restructuring and cost-saving plan. And overall, things are really not looking good for them, for the simple reason that by focusing almost exclusively on ultra-technological SUVs and 100% electric vehicles. At Jaguar Land Rover, its strategy has made it one of the brands most exposed to Chinese competition. We'll see how it goes. Jaguar might stage a comeback with the arrival of all-electric models, otherwise it's unclear what could quickly get Jaguar Land Rover back on track. To be continued. We've covered today's news and I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, subscribe, and consider supporting the channel by clicking the join button. See you tomorrow for another week of news. Bye.